Berkeley County Government is tackling a lot of issues, from growth to traffic to infrastructure. Today, I speak exclusively with Berkeley County Supervisor Johnny Cribb for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Berkeley County Supervisor Johnny Cribb, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, there's so much going on right now in Berkeley County. So let me ask you this, Johnny. What is the snapshot of where the county is currently?
Well, we just went through another census cycle and learned that out of 3,142 counties in the country, we were 30th in growth, so which puts us in the top 1% of growth in the country. So a lot of what's going on in the county is managing and mitigating the effects of that growth and all the different, growth is neither all good nor all bad, but it's certainly a little bit or a lot of both. So the reality of growth and what we need to do as a government is paramount in the county right now.
Johnny, let me ask you, what exactly are the results of all of this?
Well, growth puts a lot of strain on infrastructure, water and sewer, roads, our schools, public safety. So we got to make sure we're doing what we need to do to keep up with all those different things. And thankfully, last November, two very important referendums passed in Berkeley County. For the first time, the school district had a penny sales tax for schools. That helps greatly solve the school issue. They'll collect about $55 million, give or take, in the first year from that one penny alone. And that penny's been growing by about 12% a year. So that helps solve the issue of how are we going to build new schools and who's going to pay for it. On the county side, we asked the voters to support, again, our penny referendum for roads. It was passed originally in 2008. It was renewed in 2014. And then we just passed it again in 2022. We're excited about a bunch of different road projects that we're going to be able to tackle and address. But we also added a greenbelt component, a conservation preservation component for the first time to our penny. So we will utilize about 10% of those annual funds to go toward protecting green space. So we need to do a lot more than build new roads, and we need to do a lot more than make sure we got schools and adequate water pressure and sewer capacity and all that good stuff. We need to make sure that we don't wake up 10, 20 years from now and go, oh my goodness, what happened? So there's a lot of things that we hold near and dear in Berkeley County, and the natural beauty of Berkeley County is just second to none. We're the largest county in the state of South Carolina, and Berkeley County is bigger than the state of Rhode Island. So with that comes a lot of natural beauty that we want to try to protect. So we already have the national forest, which is incredible to have in your county. We've got the lakes and the rivers, which we're blessed to have all the waterfront property and water access in the county. And we also have a lot of conservation efforts that have been going on by the private community for many, many years. The Cooper River Corridor and some other areas that are protected from future development. So I think a big key to Berkeley County is we're bringing in some outstanding new jobs. Project Redwood that just came in was the largest industry to ever come to the state of South Carolina, and it came to Berkeley County. It brings a lot of high-paying jobs. And just some great opportunities to change quality of life for our residents. But we want to make sure that we're protecting all that's near and dear as well, so we can mitigate growth. We refer to it often as we need to have smart growth. And the only way to have smart growth is to address all of those different issues. You can't accidentally end up at a place. You got to be purposeful about every single decision you make and what you do. I get beat up, and council gets beat up personally about growth more than anything that we deal with. And nobody wants to hear about predecessors or excuses, so we don't often give them. But the reality is the growth that you see going on right now in Cane Bay and in Nexton and Carnes Crossroads in that region were approved many years ago. Those entitlements were given to developers, and that's their legal right. Back then, I imagine most people would have a hard time even fathoming that a Cane Bay would be there, because all it was woods, and people might have been thinking, goodness, will development ever go out that far? And now we've certainly learned, absolutely, development will go out that far. So our efforts on the conservation end and protecting property while making sure we're not trampling on people's property rights is quite the challenge, but I'm proud of what we've been able to do so far.
And Johnny, this was probably well, I guess it was last year when I was doing some work out in Nexton for my job, and I didn't realize that Nexton was actually in Berkeley County and not Dorchester County.
One of our challenges is, take Charleston County that has around 415,000 or so people, give or take. Only about 60,000 of those people live in unincorporated Charleston County, meaning the highest percentage, or most of the people, live in a municipality. They live in a city or a town. In Berkeley County, the new census comes out, and we have roughly 225,000 people right now. And 130,000 to 140,000 of those live in unincorporated Berkeley County, meaning that front line of service isn't provided by a city or a town. It's actually provided by county government. So that's a big challenge. It's hard to imagine that communities like Nexton and Cane Bay aren't in a city or a town. I mean, they're big enough to be a city or a town themselves. And oftentimes the folks that live in there, they want municipal services, but as a county government, the services that we provide are going to be the same throughout the county. So whatever we're doing out in Cane Hoy and Hugie and Cross and Alvin and you name it, are the same services that we're providing in some of these urbanized and densely urbanized areas. I don't know if in the future any incorporation will come about, but it's certainly a good model for these new mass developments. Hindsight's 2020. Back in the approval process, if I could go back in time, certainly those development agreements would have contemplated that. That would have been best for the community and best for the county.
Okay, in those unincorporated areas of Berkeley County, Johnny, what type of services do these people need right now?
Well, everybody's going to scream roads, and rightly so. The road story is different throughout the county, and in the urbanized, the heavily traveled areas, we're working on road widenings and intersections. We're working on road resurfacing throughout the entirety of the county. In this referendum, we're going to spend a lot more money on resurfacing than we did on the prior two referendums. 20% of the annual allocation will go toward resurfacing. But in the rural areas, we still have almost 300 miles of dirt roads, county-maintained dirt roads in Berkeley County. So on the last referendum, we did 59 dirt to paved roads, where we converted 59 roads that were dirt, and now they're paved and really nice. So that would be one of the biggest things. Flooding, we're in the low country. So I think if you were to sit anybody down in my position in the entire low country, they would say flooding is really a challenge. Around here, it doesn't seem that we get those steady rains that might drop a half inch or 3/4 inch. The other day in parts of Berkeley County, we got 6 inches of rain. So these storm systems aren't built for 6 inches of rain, and we live in the low country. So us keeping the ditches cleaned out and the pipes cleaned out and the culverts cleaned out is quite the challenge. But the services we provide throughout the county, I mean, we have libraries throughout the county, obviously our sheriff's department and all those different substations throughout the county. We added another ambulance to our rotation this year. Every 15,000 residents or so, we add a new ambulance to our service. So we have, not counting Hanahan and Goose Creek, who run a Berkeley County ambulance out of their fire departments, we have 15 other ambulances serving Berkeley County. So with growth, it triggers, the sheriff needs new deputies, we need new paramedics, and we need new EMTs. Potentially, recently we built a new library in Cane Bay. Obviously there wasn't one there, but there needed to be one. So we try to be responsive and fair with county services as the population grows in certain areas. One of our big battle cries has become, we'll never be able to widen the roads wide enough if people have to travel many, many miles from their home to go to work or to shop or to get any of the services that they need. So in the Nextons and Cane Bays and Carnes and Clements Ferry Road and some of those regions that are really booming, if you have to drive to Charleston County for your retail shopping, if you've got to drive from even Cane Bay to deep into Goose Creek to go to your pediatrician appointment or to go get a good pizza or you name it, that's just putting more cars on the road needlessly. So recently we've had a big intent of trying to get more commercial opportunities near these urbanized and densely populated areas. If you can go get a good steak or go have a good family meal somewhere close to your house, that's where you're going to go. And if you can't, you're going to jump on the roads and clog up intersections because you're not going to just stay at home. So,
Oh man, so let me break it down for you, Johnny. So right now in Berkeley County, how many cars are actually on the road?
oh goodness, I don't know, and I don't even know how you find that out. I will tell you that because we're the municipalities and counties are the closest governments to the people. Cities and towns meet once a month. We meet twice a month.
Okay.
Committee meetings and then a council meeting at county. Sometimes I think everybody in Berkeley County thinks every road is a county road or a county responsibility. We have city and municipally owned roads. We've got county roads and we've got state roads. The amount of state roads in Berkeley County far outnumbers every other city, town, and county put together. So most of the roads that we have in our county, by a high percentage, are state roads, and they're responsibility of the state to maintain and fix. The state's been doing a good job on the major arteries and major interchanges on the interstate. I'm certainly coming in with funds from the state for Volvo Car Drive and some other federal guide share money and state money. We've gotten some other road projects, but by their own admission, these interior roads, these neighborhood roads, these interior arteries, if you will, they haven't gotten to those at the clip they need to. And that's why our penny sales tax was so important. So it's not that the state's getting the money and not spending the money. 526 alone, the last estimate for each phase is $7 billion. Widening I-26 is hundreds of millions of dollars. Those interchanges are a lot of money. So the state's doing a lot, and there's a lot more that needs to be done. One of the things I try to remember is on the last census, 32 to 35 counties in the state stayed the same or lost people. And I got to tell you, being in the top 1% in growth is really, really tough. It's a tremendous challenge. I don't know that anybody wants to be in the top 1% of growth. You would love to be in the top 20% of growth or 25% in growth. That's manageable. You could get the positives associated with growth. We have the lowest county tax millage in the state of South Carolina. We've been able to do that in large part because of growth and because of these industries that we have brought in. But the challenges of mitigating that growth and keeping taxes low is something that we got to keep the finger on the pulse of it. And we're not a 3, 5, 7 year plan even kind of county. We're growing so much. We have to figure out what we're going to do this year and what we're going to do next year. We're proud of our penny referendum. We're proud of how specific it is, and we only do a 7-year referendum. And our voters know exactly which intersections we're going to do. They know exactly which widenings we're going to do. And there's a lot of other separate projects that we specifically say, if you pass this, this is what we're going to do. And this is what we're going to do in the next 7 years. And 7 years from now, you're going to get to decide, do we trust them again? Do we vote for this penny again? But because we do it in 7 years, we're able to be very specific. If we had a 15-year penny tax program, I wouldn't know how to predict what the need's going to be 9, 11, 13, 15 years from now. We'd have to be very vague with the voters. It would be tough for us to be responsive to the specific needs and gain the trust that we need. So the 7-year plan forces us to have to do this every 7 years. It seems like it comes really fast. But I think the local government churns out more projects in a faster way because they know they're going to be judged by the voters a lot sooner rather than later. And the public can, or the county government can specifically note what needs to be done because you're looking in a much shorter range on your forecast.
So, Johnny, let me ask you this. What separate road projects are currently in place right now?
Well, we just passed the new referendum in May of 22, so we just started collecting the new penny in May. So a lot of the projects that you see going on right now are finishing up the 14 projects, the Henry Brown widening, the 176 widening, the Foster Creek Tanner Ford intersection improvement. There's some projects from 14. As you probably heard, we finished Railroad Avenue. We're so proud of that. That project was 20, 30 years old. It seemed like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. You didn't know if you'd ever see it. And we finally got it done. And what it's done to regional transportation, not just in the city of Hanahan, but the entire region. And there were vehicles needlessly pouring on Highway 52 that didn't need to, just to leave Hanahan, to go down and get back into Hanahan. And now Railroad Avenue keeps that from happening. On our next referendum, we'll start a lot of projects a lot sooner. County Council hasn't met and voted on which intersection projects, for example, we'll do first. I do know that Highway 52 and Highway 176 is a keynote project, or is a key project for this next referendum. Improving that intersection. It's heavily traveled by people throughout the low country. So fixing that intersection right there in the city of Goose Creek is very, very important. And also continuing to widen 176. You know, we went from Carnes Crossroads to Nexon Interchange, but that widening needs to happen all the way to Camp Hall. That's the commercial, the industrial sector. That's where all the manufacturing jobs are. That's where people are driving to. So phase 2 of the 176 widening was included in our referendum. And again, one thing that we worked really hard on is when Project Redwood came in, for the 10 or 12 months we were evaluating Project Redwood, we were a no as a county. As much money as they were going to invest and as great as that company was going to be, we didn't have an answer for schools and we didn't have an answer for roads. And if we didn't have an answer for schools and roads, we were not going to approve the project. Well, in November, the penny for schools passed, so that checked that box, and we were in communication with the school district during this, and we've done a lot more of that recently, communicating with the school districts about the impact some of these new industries might have on them and what it would mean. And phase 2 of 176 was good, but it didn't finish that road. So we tried to work with the state to get some money from the Department of Commerce and some state incentives that they often give out. And we didn't have any luck in that area. So we actually worked with the company, and for the first time, Project Redwood coming in, we know how much their taxes they're going to pay annually. But for the first 10 years or so, they're going to pay an amount much larger than that because they're going to pay for phase 3 of 176. And in our agreement for Project Redwood, we don't know how much it'll cost yet because the cost of construction is really going up big time. But in our agreement, it could be up to $125 million. Okay. So this is an example where it's an industry that's going to come in with some really high-paying jobs. really big tax base for the school district, not even counting their penny. And instead of waiting 7 years from now to put phase 3 on the next referendum, this industry that's coming into our county is literally going to pay for phase 3 of that road and save our local taxpayers upwards of $100 million.
And Johnny, so with Redwood, how many taxes will it be annually?
It'll depend on what their total investment ends up being. Okay. It's when you bring in the largest industry in the history of the state of South Carolina, it's going to be very big. Like most taxes, most of that money goes to the school district. I think the school district will get 64% of that money. So that's a lot of money going into the school district. I can't remember what the numbers are, but back when we broke ground on Project Redwood, I talked about how many teachers the school district would be able to hire from this one project alone, and how many sheriff deputies and paramedics we would be able to hire from this one project alone. And this is a 600-acre site. It's one company. And I want to say it generated the tax base of somewhere around 500-600 homes. So one industry that we were frankly blessed to get generates that much of tax base without having the same impact of obviously 500-600 homes would. So it's really good jobs for people. The other thing that was important to us in Camp Hall, if a company wants to come in and they don't pay a wage where someone can afford to live in Carnes Cave Bay and Nexton, our discussions don't go very far with them. Because if you're paying $15, $16, $17 an hour, and someone working there has to drive all the way to North Charleston or somewhere else to live, all we've done is we've just exacerbated our road problem. So a lot of the companies, or almost all the companies, if not all the companies, coming to Camp Hall, we can't ultimately choose where people decide to live, but we do know that they can afford to live in that region based on the wages that are being paid. So the tax base is significant. It'll be the number 1 or number 2 taxpayer in the entire Berkeley County. So a big, big deal. Dozens and dozens and dozens of teachers from one industry can be hired, and a lot of sheriff's deputies and a lot of paramedics. So we've been able to keep our county tax millage low. I said earlier, it's the lowest in the whole state. The last time we did a reassessment, we lowered it. So even though we had the lowest county millage in the entire state, we lowered our millage. We feel like there's a reassessment coming up. We don't know the data yet, but there's a very good possibility that we lower the millage again. So we're literally competing against ourselves in that category. So we'd like to think that our residents, when you have to deal with the traffic of growth and the big trucks that come in with industry, and if the only thing you see are negatives, it's really hard to live with. But if a byproduct of that is you have really low taxes, and these industries are coming in paying big, big taxes that allows the school district and the county public safety services to hire more people that serve you. These people that we hire from these big industries, the school district doesn't hire 50, 60 new teachers and park them at Project Redwood. They get put into the schools throughout the county. Whenever we hire all these new sheriff's deputies and all of these new paramedics and EMTs, they don't stay at Camp Hall. We put them throughout the entirety of the county. So there are benefits that our residents experience. What we got to make sure is that we don't do, too much of that. The beautiful thing about Berkeley County, and I was trying to get to this earlier, it's if you drive our county, you see everything. I mean, you can start in Daniel Island and drive through our county and end up in Sand Ridge, close to Holly Hill. Or you can go down 41 to Jamestown and Honey Hill and Schuylerville, or drive down 17A through Macedonia and through Alvin and Santee Circle, and you name it, Cordsville. And then you go to the city of Goose Creek and the town of Mott's Corner and the city of Hanahan and the town of Bono. There's a whole different group of ways to live in our county. If you want to live on a mobile home that's affordable on a really big piece of land, you can do that. If you want to have a farm, we got a lot of farmland in Berkeley County. You can live on a farm and still do farming just like they did many, many years ago. If you want to live in a golf course community, we got several of those and everything in between. So it would be quite the shame if the diversity of how people live ever went away in Berkeley County. The people that live in Berkeley County are really proud of the county and love the county. I count myself and my family as one of them, certainly. I'm only going to be a supervisor for a little while longer. I lived here a whole lot longer before I was a supervisor, and I'll live here until the end of my days. And what a shame it would be if that character that defines our county ever went away. And in order to protect that, you got to put a lot of things in place to make sure you do. If you follow the news recently, the county put a moratorium in place on development. And the moratorium didn't mean no more development, everything stops. What the moratorium meant was oftentimes on county council, we would get attacked by the public in the grocery store on the streets and we wouldn't even know what they were talking about. There's this big new development coming. And the developers would meet with staff and then they would meet with the planning commission and ultimately it would come to county council. No community meetings, no input with county council. Well, we value what the community thinks, and obviously we end up having the responsibility of voting. So the moratorium created more of a bookend process where you gotta have dialogue with county council at the very beginning, and ultimately county council approves it at the very end. The public really appreciates this because at the beginning we require you to have public meetings. You can't even move along until you have public meetings. But developers even appreciate it because if they meet with the county at the beginning and they sense that it's going to be really, really tough, and they meet with the community and it's going to be really, really tough, they can alter their plans and not needlessly spend money on something that's never going to pass. The frustrating part would be spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that's working its way through the process and ultimately it fails at county council and it made it through all the other stages. A lot of times when these developers and folks meet with the community, they're very responsive to the community's concerns and wishes and needs. And when good developers are responsive, the project has a greater chance of success. When they ignore the community, and here's what we want to do, irregardless of how it impacts you who have lived here 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, we don't really care about that. We're going to do this anyway. That doesn't get received very well by the community or by county council. So this moratorium process, we have not lifted the moratorium on many projects so far. And there are several projects that we did lift the moratorium on to allow them to advance through the normal process. But the community engagement and community input, I would say, has been doubled because of this process.
And I have 7 minutes left according to Zoom, Johnny. But let me ask you, how many of those developers actually have met with your county officials and the community?
Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, yes, sir. How many of those new developers have actually met with your county officials and the community?
Oh, they have to, every single one of them. Berkeley County is largely zoned Flex 1. Right. The last stat I heard was about 80% of our property was zoned Flex 1. Mm-hmm. And Flex 1 means you can build one dwelling unit per 30,000 square feet. That's 2/3 of an acre. There are some developers that have developed neighborhoods by right, meaning if you own 500 acres Flex 1, you can go in and build one unit per 2/3 of an acre. And you don't need anybody's permission. That's your right. You pay your taxes every year, and that's your zoning allowance. Oftentimes, developers want to come in and they want to build more than one per 2/3 of an acre. And that gives us a pretty unique opportunity sometimes because we can turn down that rezoning and say, no, in this area it doesn't make sense, we're not going to do it. The problem is, in some cases, if a developer has 500 acres and they're going to build one every 30,000 square feet, let's say they end up building 500 homes. even though they could build more. And they build 500 homes spread out across the 500 acres. Sometimes a developer will come in and say, I want to build my 500 homes, but I want to build them in a much smaller area because my development costs are lower. I don't have to put in as near as many roads, as near as many water and sewer lines. Well, why would the county ever allow that? Well, the county actually would consider that if the developer puts the rest of the property in a conservation easement or protects it. So imagine a scenario where all 500 acres get developed with houses everywhere and there's no significant green space protected. Or 400 or 500 houses get developed on half of that property and then 200-300 acres get protected and they can never be built on under a conservation easement. Wow. So none of these things are easy and they're all tricky. Mm-hmm. But I know this county council, I've been here 4.5 years, and we haven't approved any mega developments. I mean, we haven't done any of that in the 4.5 years we've been here. I think we've been really respectful of property rights, and we have been really responsive to our residents to mitigate the growth that's going to come, and there's nothing we can do about it. But there is absolutely something we can do about future growth, present and future growth. And how we handle that. So I'm hoping that 10, 15, 20 years from now, somebody's not giving the same interview with you going, what was Johnny Cribb County Council thinking, Quintin, this many years ago when they were doing all of these reckless and crazy things that they shouldn't have been doing. Between this moratorium process and the Greenbelt and all the private conservation groups we're working with and how we're working with the developers, I think with all the information that we have right now, we're being responsive to all and fair to all parties involved.
Yes, sir. And I know I got 4 minutes left, but I want to go back to some of the things you said earlier. 176. What's the timetable for that widening?
Phase 1 was a 4-year build. I'm trying to think of when we kicked it off. It was somewhere in late 2021. So it'd be done in 4 years. It takes about a year to design and get through the Army Corps of Engineers and wetlands and permits and all that stuff. Clements Ferry Road Phase 2 is also a 4-year project, but boy, it's really tracking along fast. I think we'll get ahead. We'll get done ahead of schedule. Banks Construction's doing that project, doing an awesome job. As long as those orange cones are up and all that's going on, it really impacts traffic. As soon as we can get that out of the way, the faster the traffic will flow. So those are our 2 big projects along with Henry Brown going on right now. And they'll all be done in the next couple of years. But no sooner than those get done, we'll be starting the next group.
And speaking of traffic, how many ambulances do you expect to have in Berkeley County in the next couple of years with the future growth?
Well, we have 15 right now, not counting what runs in City, Goose Creek and Hannigan, so that's 17. And that is, if you live in Berkeley County, that ought to make you feel safe. We've added a lot of sheriff deputies. If you live in Berkeley County, that ought to make you feel safe. It's all about response time. Our fire departments have gotten 2 additional groups of funding in the last 5 years. They've more than doubled their revenue in the last 5 years. We've gone from 26 separate fire departments. We're down to about 10 consolidated departments, and they're doing an amazing job. So one of the things I'm particularly most proud of in the last 4.5 years is the ambulance service, the sheriff's department, our volunteer fire departments. They are, without a shadow of a doubt, markedly better than they were. No matter how great you thought they were 4 years ago, they have made great strides under their leadership in helping to protect and serve the county. It's all about response time. A fire doubles in size every minute. If your kid is choking on a sucker, how fast is the medic? You don't know what to do. How fast is the medic going to get there? Every time we add an ambulance, we haven't added to our boundaries of the county, but every time we add an ambulance, we further saturate our county, and it helps response time. Every time we give the sheriff 5, 10, a few years ago, we approved 24 new deputies. So every time we add a concentration of public safety employees to the county, In large part because of growth. That's how we pay for it. And these awesome industries that we've gotten in, Google and Newport and Redwood and W International and all, we've been blessed with all of that. That has really helped us address public safety.
Oh, I have so many follow-up questions to ask you, but I'll get to that in the next interview. But for now, Berkeley County Supervisor Johnny Cribb, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much, Quintin. Anytime.
Oh, you appreciate it. I appreciate it greatly.